Shut up, compressor.
Off with 4 at 1-8, over. Roger, thank you.
Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to episode 11 of the Tamiya F-4B Phantom build. Now in this episode, you are going to get reintroduced to my air conditioner, as you can hear in the background. It is May, and summer has pretty much officially broken here in Central Texas, which means the garage is hot and steamy at night, so the air conditioner is keeping it pretty much tolerable. I'm sorry for the noise, there's not really much I can do about it. Every time I try to edit it out, people complain that it sounds weird, so tough shit. Anyway, this time out, now that we have applied all of the markings and fun shit around the fuselage, it is time to attend to the heat shielding back here and to go ahead and make it all dirty. Now later F4s like the F4J, the F4S, the F4E, and so on had smokeless engines installed, but those weren't a thing on the F4B. The F4B had very smoky, very sooty engines, and it was very common for this heat shielding area to basically just be black. And yeah, that would be the easy way out, but I'm not gonna quite do that. I want to do a little more something than just, you know, paint this area black and call it a day. I want a little bit of character in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some 0.4mm Azu tape. It's basically the same stuff as Tamiya tape, just super ass thin. And put a bunch of strips on here and go ahead and hit that with some different colors to basically look like the later heat staining or heat stressing that you would see on these panels when the smokeless engines were installed. Then I'm going to hit that with a flat coat, then I'm going to remove the tape, and we'll have sort of a nice thing going on in here with different patterning, different sheen levels. And then I can come in with the black, and I'm thinking I'm going to use probably just, you know, black pigment mixed with some X28 or something like that, just to get a good sort of thing that'll dry nice and sooty and gross, kind of like the inside of the engines when I did those. And just paint that on, and that will stick better to the flat coated stuff than it will to the glossy. It'll still stick to all of it, but you know, it'll be slightly different. And so that way we'll get the dark sooty blackness going on, but we'll also get some interesting variation. At least that's my plan. And I'm sure once the tails are on and all that stuff, like, it'll just be invisible unless you look at it the right way. But that's what I'm planning to do. So first up, I need a shitload of strips of 0.4mm. I've got a little paint bottle here to hold that shit on. So what I'm going to do, basically just stick a piece there, cut it, stick another piece, cut it, and just kind of work myself around the cap here until I have a whole bunch of pieces I can play with. Okay, so here's how this is going to go. Basically, I'm going to take one little strip of tape, come in here, place that like so, and then it being like a perfect length too. Sweet. I don't know if I have too many that long. Second one, try to get it right alongside. Third one, get it right alongside too. pull that up. Yeah. And basically, just kind of rinse and repeat this back down the heat shield. But note, these do not really need to be perfectly straight, just kind of in that general vein. And once it gets to about that line of rivets there, or they're actually screws, after that, the way the airflow works, this part doesn't get all smoky. It's basically this area right in here. So you can kind of back it off and not have to worry as much about the masking down there. Okay, so that was a whole lot of fun masking, and now it's time to put some paint down. I'm going to start with a mix of MRP Dark Gunship Gray and NATO Black. It gets us this cool looking grimy dark gray, slightly brownish color. Basically, just going to start kind of haphazardly working the panels. Okay, next up, some clear red brown mixed with a little bit of NATO brown, and once again, rapid thinner, just to get this sort of brownish color for some heat staining back here. Next up, some insignia white. Believe me, this will make sense, I hope. Next up, some very heavily thinned super matte black. This is going to go on the sides. Again, this will all be covered up by the really grody exhaust soot that I want to put in here from the smoking engines. But I want to build some of this up first, so when that black goes down, we have a little bit of this stuff working in our favor. And one thing that I've noticed on looking at various F4s is that you do tend to have sort of a kind of like a two-zone thing going on with this deeper staining, kind of at the bottom, where it also slightly gets onto the arrestor hook. And you also have it sort of along this, like, upper area where I guess, hell, I don't know why it seems to bifurcate like this. It just does. Let's roll with it. And finally, some MRP clear blue for this little aft section here. Okay, one last job. Some MRP matte clear. Alright, now it's time for the fun part of stripping all of these little fuckers off. I can't wait to see how horrible this looks back here. Not sure I'm liking what I've got going on back here, but we'll see. And here we are with the masking tape removed. And honestly, these are a bit too straight for my liking if I were just leaving it alone. So if I were going for a later F4 with the smokeless engines, this is not how I would go about it. I don't think the heat staining back there quite worked out as I'd hoped. And again, up here, a bit too regular. But I am hopeful that, you know, once you flip it over, come on, kind of see it from an angle like this, plus with all the, you know, all the exhaust soot in here, that will work out just fine. So we shall see. But so far, so good. So I know that may have just seemed like a quick record scratch in this video, but in reality, I've been away from this kit for 6 months. Part of that has to do with building a ICM OV10 Bronco for Models for Ukraine 2. Part of it has to do with being laid off and finding another job and starting another job. Part of it has to do with some health things. Part of it has to do with travel. Part of it has to do with it being just really fucking hot this summer. And thankfully now it's November and it's only, you know, still unseasonably warm, but that's low 80s, not low 100s. The compressor's still over there bitching in the corner. Anyway, from where I'm sitting, this can go one of two ways. I can try to just pick up exactly where I left off, remember exactly what I was working on, or I can admit it's been 6 fucking months. And, you know, the last that I know, the last that I reviewed on footage and whatnot, I was working down here on heat shielding, kind of getting this stuff together, right? And I still want to add the black in here like I was talking about, all that stuff. That's going to happen. But it can't happen yet because there's all kinds of other shit that has to happen. That's a later in the build thing. So, what needs to happen next before I can really have more fun with the weathering? Well, I need to go ahead and establish some base panel lining. I need to put sealant coats onto the various decals and stencils and shit like that. And so, a good place to start there is to just get the panel lines established with like a single good base color, maybe two, maybe like a grayer color for the overall fuselage, and black to separate, you know, actual functional surfaces like flaperons. To do that, I could use ammo panel line washes, but honestly, they're a bit thick for my taste. They, you know, I still love their color variety, but man, they're a pain in the ass to work with. As much as I love how they just swipe away when you're done, getting them to actually run into panel lines, especially panel lines as fine as these, can sometimes be a pain in the ass. So instead, we are going to use some Guns Mr. Weathering Color Multi-Gray. Now this looks really light, and that's by design. Shit really does show up on this light gold gray. So, if you have never seen how panel line washes work before, you're going to find out. And if you have, you're also going to find out, unless you just want to fast forward. Basically, go in here, find where, you know, find some place that we want to be. Zoom out a little bit so maybe the focus isn't such a pain in the ass. There we go. And we just touch, and boom, it just shoots right along panel line due to that lovely capillary action. This stuff is lovingly nice and thin. If we get a little bit over, don't really care too much. We still need to hit these. I believe these are fasteners along the edges here, but you know, they look like rivets. They need to be hit. They need to get the invite to the contrast party as well. So just kind of keep this going. Unfortunately, because this F4 has a lot of surface detail, this is an extended type of thing. And the most frustrating part is knowing that I will get to go back and probably redo, I don't know, maybe a quarter of it because of the weathering and touch-ups that I have planned. They will certainly fuck some of this up pretty bad. Part of this problem is that some of these surfaces have just like little rivety dots all over them, and I want to pick those out. I don't want to ignore them, but that means basically just smearing shit all over the surface. Good news is the Mr. Weathering color stuff does clean up fairly nicely, so we're not going to have to deal with a whole bunch of shit just hanging out. It also helps me see, like right here, I'm probably going to have to go in here and just deepen this panel line a bit, because it seems to just not really be grabbing. So that can be good information on where I just need to maybe get a scriber or something like that and just do a little quick swipe. And we'll run through that when it comes time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the underside of the F4 with the multi-gray as well. Again, this is all establishing act type stuff. Cool thing though is I've got that on-target video that shows just how filthy the underside of the 323 F4s got in Vietnam. They were not clean at all. So going a bit hard on the panel lining, I think will work out just fine. This is actually something I picked up on the ICM Bronco, because it had a white wing. I was going in there with, you know, very, very light gray washers on that, and even those things stood out exceptionally well on that background. And so when you have a light tone like this, man, it just does wonders if you get the right detail and the right wash. Alright, now it's time to get in here and remove some of this multi-gray. So, got a little bit of odorless enamel thinner, odorless mineral spirits effectively, and we're just coming in and just getting that shit out of the rivets, out of panel lines, and so on. Frustratingly, it seems like the clear I put down months ago, I don't know, not that happy with it. See it build shit with less stencils and decals, so I don't have to deal with the don't have to deal with the clear coats in the first place, right? That would be the way to really do it. So get some on a Q-tip, kind of roll it off in my hand just to get the, you know, I'm not putting down a fucking soggy rag. Just want enough to get the excess multi-gray out of there. It's pretty cool how it just removes the worst of it like that, isn't it? Thankfully, I'm not too precious about how clean the light gold gray stays. It's going to be a dirty, dirty plane by the time we're done. But this just gives us that definition that's very, very appreciated. Before we do all the touch-ups. I feel like, especially in this area here, I need to come in and maybe do a bit of rescribing, just to pick up those lines. They do feel a bit lost. It's like a weak spot on every fucking Phantom kit. Which to me, I can't escape everything. There's some gravity in the universe after all. So that's basically that. That's the super secret trick to dealing with washes on an F4. Odorless mineral spirit, Q-tips, and elbow grease. How about that? So, definitely getting there. Let's flip it around, see how we're doing on the underside. Not bad, not bad. Cool. Okay, so getting the lines back in place, I'm using this little scriber saw thing from Radu Brisnan's shop from forever ago. I've had this thing. The thing I like about it is it's not very prone to wandering the way that a lot of other tools that I have are when this kind of thing happens. So I can just sort of do that. Get right up where I want to go. See how that looks. Hold on. If my head gets in the way of this shot, I am massively sorry. I just need to be able to see what I'm doing here. Of course, I go to do that and I need to reshake the fucking goddamn thing. Look at that. Perfect. And while we're here, something else I want to do is pick out the functional surfaces a bit. So not just the panel lines, but like the flaperons and shit like that, right? And I want to do those in black. So this is the shit that moves. So this is a great place to go right here. Okay, so now that the first wash has been removed, it's time to go ahead and do another sealing coat, this time with some Tamiya LP23 flat clear, which, funnily enough, just isn't flat at all, but it's a good sealant, especially because I want to come in here and do a bit of sanding work. So this is basically to protect the shit out of the decals. So I can come in here and sand, kind of unify everything before we go to the next stages. The hard part with this is, again, the trap I made for myself of folding the wings and gluing them in place. Bad, Matt. Very bad. Okay, so let that sit for a few minutes, and basically what we're going to do after that is come in and sand it down, and it's going to look kind of like what we got going on here with Eagly, where from certain angles this looks like absolute shit because we've sanded down over some of the decals and whatnot, but from the other angles they look fine, and so once it gets another coat of clear it should be good. One thing that pisses me off about Eagly is the insignia broke. Now, I mean, it was kind of fucked up before. Like, this is the one that gave me more trouble than anything else. But that's annoying. The good news is I can probably mask and fix that, and I can just play it off as like a different blue, or maybe I can just, you know, do the blue and then put in some, you know, yellow zinc chromate and some gray or something to represent some nice, lovely touch-ups. So, yay. So we're back with Sneck after a coat of Tamiya LP23 that we kind of sanded and sort of recoated. And basically the goal here is getting rid of all of the carrier film bullshit from all of the stencils. In the future, I'm just going to use those Edward peel away ones, especially now that people really seem to be cracking them. Because, man, it feels like a crime coming in here and just sanding these things. Even more than a crime on Eagly, sort of second bench Phantom. The decal's broke. And granted, this insignia has given me nothing but problems since the second I put it down, but that's going to suck to fix. And then I also managed to burn through the white on the tail accidentally. So, it's the reason that Sneck is the pride of place one. Eagly's just kind of following along. It's the derpy younger sibling, kind of like our dogs. Maisie's the mature one, Molly's the big dope. So yeah, just getting out the roughness. Also, I think some of this roughness is from when I sprayed the aqua gloss, which every time I spray that shit, you know, it's like, it does its job for some things, but I'm always like, why am I using this again? I've got lacquer clears that I trust a lot more. It's like acrylic clears, even the best ones. There's an element of rolling the dice with them. At least whenever I spray them. And they've set up this really annoying like roughness in the wing root area, which is tough to get at. Listen to me bitch while I sand. So it's funny, as I'm working on this kit, I'm working on so many other kits at the same time. So I've got this, I've got the new Zukimura F-4G Wild Weasel on the go. I've got a 1/48th Tamiya M1A2 Abrams that I'm thinking about setting up as like a, what if Ukraine got some old M1A2s to play with type of scenario, right? And that's intended as kind of like a quick little, you know, wrap it up before the end of the year type of thing. We'll see. That's entirely the fault of Justin Lentz for twisting my arm by just posting the idea. I've got some 172nd aircraft going on that aren't really honestly far enough along to make anything, you know, make anything of at this point. They're just kind of sitting there, and I fussed with them a bit during, you know, if I'm on like a work call or something like that, like I can just kind of sit there and have something to twiddle with my hands, but they're probably not going to go too many places, at least until, you know, at least one of these big 148 bastards is finished. I was working on the new Andy's Hobby Headquarters 1/16th Sherman, and you know, it's one of those where there's nothing wrong with that kit, but for whatever reason, I don't even know what it is, it just isn't doing anything for me. Like, it, you know, I work on it and it's like, something about it's just leaving me cold. So I know when that feeling kicks up that it's not a good sign. It's a great excuse to just kind of set that thing back in the box for a bit and just let it marinate. I'm sure I'll come back to it in time. A 1/16th Easy 8 is, you know, tough to say no to over the long term. Even if the Easy 8 is, to me, the least interesting of the Shermans because it's so overdone. It's like the Tiger of Shermans. That's probably why I'm a bit bummed by it. But, yeah, the kit itself, solid kit. Just, again, kind of tough time getting motivated, especially when everybody and their dog is building one. I think that might be one of the benefits of me slipping away from these Phantoms for a little while, actually, is when I was building them, there were a lot of other people building them, and then, you know, I kind of backed away to work on the Bronco and shit, and I come back, and it seems like a much cleaner field. That's a great place to do some touch-ups, because, look at that, I got some crackling. How the fuck did that happen? We'll mark that down. It's fucking annoying. Yeah, these AOA stencils, like, color-wise, you know, density-wise, opacity-wise, all that, they're great. But they're still fucking stencils, and they still have fucking carrier film. And so, playing this stupid game of hide. But I think we're getting there. I think, you know, once we go through this and then do maybe another coat on top of this with a good clear, not that Tamiya LP23 is bad, it's just, it's not flat. Like, it says it's a flat clear, and, I mean, look at that shine. Like, that's not fucking flat. And, you know, so maybe some GX113, or maybe a Guns semi-gloss or something like that, or semi-matte, just to get us to a happier place. And a more unified finish. And then we can start with the touch-ups. So I keep stressing about, oh god, what if I burn through the paint? What if I do that? And I have to, again, remind myself, if I do, who gives a fuck? Because it's not like I'm out of light gold gray, and it's not like I'm not planning on doing, you know, this thing's been patched together, flying out of Da Nang for months, dropping bombs. You know, it's got its own worries, and they're not looking pretty. So overall, I think that's looking a lot cleaner. Stencils look nice. Just keep cursing myself with the stupid decision to fold the wings and glue them. Okay, so the moment of truth is here. It's time to go ahead and make this stuff ungloss. Some GX113. This is my absolutely favorite flat in the world. Unlike Tamiya LP23, we know what this shit does. And I've thinned it here with some Mr. Leveling Thinner, which it doesn't need, because it's supposed to go dead flat, so it, you know, ideally works even better with just regular Mr. Color Thinner, or you can make it, if you want super dead flat, you can even get it to run with some Mr. Rapid Thinner. By running it with a bit of Mr. Leveling Thinner, it's taking literally just a tiny little edge off of the flatness. And this stuff, I should add, goes flat unlike anything else I've ever used. When you first spray it down, you're like, it's okay. Whatever. And then as it goes through the drying and setting and curing process, it just gets flatter and flatter. And it doesn't do it by fogging everything up, making everything kind of like frosty looking. It's one of the few that'll take things dead flat without really changing their tone all that much. So I don't know what they put in this, but GSI Krios, Gunze, whatever you want to call them by, this is the good shit. Alright, y'all, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and call this a wrap on this installment of the Tamiya F-4B build. Everything's coming along nicely. We've got most of it unglossed, ready for touch-ups and additional weathering. And of course, getting back to the heat shielding back here to make it nice and dirty. So, thanks for watching. Sorry that it has been such a delay over the past few months to get this thing back on the bench and heading towards completion, but we're back and moving again, and I look forward to seeing this build through with y'all watching along. If you want, as usual, to get early access to videos before they drop on YouTube, you can sign up for my Patreon over at patreon.com/DukesModels. There's always YouTube as well, and I am starting to maybe, sort of, perhaps, possibly, maybe, I don't know, play around with the TikTok. So if y'all have any ideas for what kind of modeling content you might like to see on TikTok, hit me up. I'm willing to, play around, experiment, see how it goes. Thanks, and catch y'all later.